Welcome to this explainer. If you're an infrastructure admin gearing up for the Nutanix NCP-MCI 7.5 certification, well, you're exactly where you need to be. Today, we're setting a really deliberate, highly focused tone as we dive into one of the most notoriously tricky areas of the exam, Objective 5.9. This covers firewall and common access card authentication. The reason this specific subtopic trips up so many candidates is because it bridges strict network security rules directly with identity management. You need to know not just the configurations, but exactly how they interact within AOS 7.5 and Prism Central 7.5. But don't worry, we're going to break it all down so you're fully prepared.
Here's our quick roadmap for the next few minutes. We'll start with why Firewall and CAC matter, walk through Firewall Best Practices, tackle CAC authentication configuration, expose some common exam traps, and finally, hit the key facts to memorize.
Let's dive right into Section 1, why Firewall and CAC matter. Getting the underlying why down now is going to make remembering the exact port numbers so much easier later on.
Okay, so your baseline security posture dictates literally everything else you do. Nutanix is super explicit about this. Your hypervisor, the controller VM or CVM, and Prism Central must be protected behind a stateful firewall. This isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's a hard requirement rooted in a strict zero-trust mentality. You're explicitly limiting traffic to only your known trusted management endpoints. Think about it. What if a compromised user workstation tries to poke around the CVM? With the zero-trust posture, your stateful firewall is just going to blindly drop those packets. Why? Because that workstation was never defined as a trusted endpoint, period. If a device doesn't explicitly need to talk to your management plane, it should be completely invisible to it.
Now, shifting from networks to identity, we need to nail down two fundamental terms before we configure a single thing. First is CAC, or Common Access Card. This is a physical smart card used for certificate-based authentication. In super secure environments, think government agencies or highly regulated enterprise bases, just typing in a password simply doesn't cut it. Instead, you physically insert a card, and it reads a cryptographic certificate. Then we have the UPN, or User Principal Name. This is basically just a username formatted like an email address. So something like user1@nutanix.com. As we'll see in a minute, getting this UPN to perfectly match the data inside your uploaded certificate is an absolute make or break requirement for the whole system to function.
All right, moving to Section 2, walkthrough of Firewall Best Practices. Let's translate that zero-trust philosophy into the exact firewall port rules you're going to see on the test.
We really need to unpack the why for each of these required ports, so you aren't just relying on rote memorization. First up, for your baseboard management controller, or IPMI networks, you need to allow port 443 or 80 for HTTPS traffic. That's just to get your out-of-band management interfaces to load up. Next is iSCSI, and this one is absolutely critical. For storage presentation between the CVM and the Acropolis hypervisor or AHV host, you have to allow ports 3260, 3261, and 3205. If you block these, your storage presentation completely breaks down. The hypervisor literally won't be able to talk to the CVM to mount volumes. It's a total showstopper. Finally, for cluster-to-cluster or node-to-node replication, so disaster recovery and backup syncing, your CVMs need destination ports 2009 and 2020 open. So understand that you are opening strictly these exact ports to allow critical management, storage, and DR services to function, while dropping absolutely everything else. Now, check out this specific configuration detail. It perfectly illustrates the underlying logic of firewall administration, and it's a huge favorite on the exam. If you've set up IP access control on the IPMI, you must add an explicit rule for the 169.254.3.0/24 subnet so it can communicate with the BMC or IPMI network. But here is the kicker. You have to place this permit rule sequentially before the broader rule that drops other networks. If you accidentally put your drop all rule first, well, that takes precedence. Your internal IPMI communication will fail, you'll be totally locked out of band management, and you're going to be taking a long, frustrating walk down to the cold data center with a crash card just to fix one misplaced rule.
Okay, Section 3, walkthrough for CAC authentication configuration. Let's pivot from network firewall rules over to identity management and trace the mechanics in Prism.
9441. Seriously, burn this number into your brain right now. When you turn on CAC authentication, the system completely stops using the standard web console login on port 443. Instead, it explicitly redirects your browser to use port 9441. Why the change? Because verifying a physical smart card certificate needs a completely separate verification flow from normal web server operations. Exam writers absolutely love testing your knowledge of this redirect, so make sure port 9441 is allowed through your firewall right alongside your standard management ports.
Let's walk through the actual clicks in Prism Central, because the exam will test your administrative mastery by asking about exact navigation paths. First, log in as an admin and switch over to the Admin Center application. On the main navigation bar, select IAM, that's Identity and Access Management. Then hit the IDP, or Identity Provider Configuration tab. From there, click Add Identity Provider and explicitly choose Common Access Card. It flows logically once you've done it a few times, but knowing that exact sequence is crucial for passing.
Once you're in that configuration window, you've got some very strict formatting rules to follow. First off, when you upload the client chain certificate from your machine to establish trust, it must be PEM encoded. PEM stands for Privacy Enhanced Mail. It's a standard base 64 format. If it's in another format, the upload just flat out fails. Second, remember that UPN we talked about earlier? The subject name field inside that uploaded certificate absolutely must match the user principal name inside your Active Directory perfectly. And finally, when you map a Prism role directly to a CAC user, you've got to specify the EDIPI, or Electronic Data Interchange Personal Identifier, UPN, for that specific user. Do it right, and when the user presents a valid smart card, the system matches the EDIPI, assigns the role, and lets them completely bypass the standard login page.
All right, on to Section 4, Common Exam Traps. Listen up, because exam writers aren't just going to test basic configs. They want to see if you can spot the deliberate edge cases.
Here's a huge one. Active Directory is fully supported for CAC authentication, but OpenLDAP is explicitly not. This is a super common trap. You might get a scenario using OpenLDAP and it asks how to configure CAC. You need to immediately spot the issue. Nutanix does support OpenLDAP for normal password authentication, so people falsely assume it works for smart cards too. It doesn't. Don't fall for the trick of assuming all LDAP services are treated equally when it comes to certificates.
Here's another major trap, and this one is all about physical networking. When you cable your IPMI port on the hypervisor to your upstream physical switch, those switch ports must be configured as access ports only. Do not, I repeat, do not use VLAN trunking on those IPMI switch ports. Let me give you a concrete example of why this matters. Imagine your core network goes down and you desperately need out-of-band IPMI access to check the server console. If that switch port is set as a trunk and you hit a native VLAN mismatch, you are completely blind. You won't be able to reach the host at all. IPMI needs the rock-solid simplicity of an untagged access port so it's available when everything else is broken. If an exam scenario suggests an 802.1q trunk for IPMI, flag it as incorrect immediately.
Our last edge case is about certificate validation. Think about this. Once a CAC certificate is issued, how does the system actually know if it gets revoked later? Say an employee gets terminated, or they just lose their physical smart card. You revoke it on your server, but how does Prism Central know? That's where OCSP comes in, the Online Certificate Status Protocol. Nutanix strongly recommends using OCSP because IAM version 2 uses it to actively query your certificate authority in real time. It acts as a secondary check during the authentication process. Without OCSP, a revoked card could technically still grant malicious access because the local system simply wouldn't know the card was invalid.
Okay, finally, Section 5, Key Facts to Memorize. We're wrapping up with a definitive cheat sheet before test day.
Let's do a rapid-fire summary to act as your ultimate high-retention anchor. 1. The very moment you enable CAC, your browser redirects to port 9441. That port must be open. 2. Active Directory is fully supported for CAC, but OpenLDAP is a hard no. Total exam trap. 3. For out-of-band management, your IPMI network needs that explicit IP rule for 169.254.3.0/24 placed before your drop rules, and those physical switch ports must be access ports only, absolutely no trunking. 4. Any CAC client chain certificate you upload has to be PEM encoded. And 5. To ensure your hypervisor can actually mount storage, your CVM to AHV iSCSI ports are always 3260, 3261, and 3205.
I want to leave you with a final, impactful thought to chew on regarding your own environments today. Have you actually audited your stateful firewall recently? Are you truly operating with a zero-trust mentality, ensuring literally no unrequired ports are open to your hypervisors, CVMs, and Prism Central? Mastering these exam objectives isn't just about passing a multiple-choice paper test. It's really about validating that you possess the skills to protect your organization's most critical infrastructure from compromise. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and best of luck with your certification prep.